Hello, my friends. Our topic is Black Moon Lilith, and I'm going to share with you my point of view and the point of view of some other people on which Black Moon Lilith is correct. There's a Black Moon Lilith that's called the true Black Moon Lilith, and another one that's called the mean Black Moon Lilith. Some people use both of them. Some people use only one of them. And then there's a third one called natural Black Moon Lilith. I'm going to tell you my point of view and the point of view of some other people on which Black Moon Lilith makes the most sense. So this is really important because, a lot of people use Black Moon Lilith, a lot of other people would like to use Black Moon Lilith, and then you're faced with these different choices. What are they? Which ones make sense? What's going on? That's what I'm going to address in this video. And the reason I'm making this video now is because over the past 2 months, from about late June to late August 2023, I've been involved in a discussion with other people that are very knowledgeable about both astrology and the astronomy, the astronomical foundations behind astrology. Some very interesting ideas, fascinating discussion. It's hosted by astro.com. Alois Trindle, the head person of astro.com, monitors these conversations. So I'm going to tell you what I've concluded and what I've learned. I learned a lot through these discussions. Also, I want to mention that I've made a 3-part series on what Black Moon Lilith is. I'm not going to go over all the details of what Black Moon Lilith is. I've already done that, and let me show you how you can get to that in case you want to. Let's see, if I go back to my browser, right. Everybody's watching this is a member of my YouTube channel, and you know about astrologydc.com that you can click on links to YouTube member videos, this button, and it takes you to all of the videos. And there is a section here called Degrees, Stars, Nodes, OOB, which means out of bounds, and Parans. So in this section, if you scroll down to the bottom, here are the 3 videos on Black Moon Lilith, what it is, the astronomy of what Black Moon Lilith is. In this video, I'm going to tell you some conclusions based on what it is, and I will summarize the basic concepts here, but our focus in this video is which one do we use, okay? But if you want to go back and go into a lot of technical details on what the true Black Moon Lilith is, what are we talking about, you can watch those videos. You don't need to go back to those videos. I'm going to focus on which one is correct, and I'll give you enough background to appreciate the ideas that I'm going to present here. Okay, let's get back to our PowerPoint. Okay, so let's go through people's thoughts on which Black Moon Lilith is correct, and in that discussion I'll be sharing with you what I happen to think. Okay, so there are 3 Black Moon Liliths, as I mentioned. The true Black Moon Lilith, also called the oscillating Black Moon Lilith. The oscillating Black Moon Lilith that term is a kind of a more technically correct term for what's commonly called true Black Moon Lilith. And then there's something called mean Black Moon Lilith, and a third one that was introduced in recent years called the natural Black Moon Lilith. Now, the Swiss Ephemeris. The Swiss Ephemeris is a set of planetary calculations, software code, that almost every astrology program uses and many, many astronomy programs use. It's a fantastic resource. It calculates planetary positions extremely accurately, so when someone wants to write some astrology software, they don't have to come up with those calculations. They just use the Swiss Ephemeris. They have a very nice and reasonable program for how you can use it in your software. Now, in the documentation for the Swiss Ephemeris, if you want to read it, I give the website address up here. They make a strong argument that natural Lilith, the natural BML short for Black Moon Lilith, the natural BML is the most reasonable one. That's the one that most likely works and astrologers should use, and both the oscillating Black Moon Lilith and the mean Black Moon Lilith just don't make any sense. They're just like, no way they could work. They're just like there's no logic to them from their point of view. So in this documentation, they explain what these different black moon Liliths are, and then they give some common sense information about what it really comes down to. And this is what they conclude. Now, on the other hand, what I think, and at least one other astronomer, Juan Revilla, thinks, is that the osculating black moon Lilith is most reasonable. So there's a different sense. You know, some astrologers think, gee, the natural black moon Lilith, that's the one that's reasonable. Some other people are saying, no, the osculating black moon Lilith, or in other words, true black moon Lilith, that actually makes more sense. Why would different people who all agree, we all agree about the astronomy, why do we come to different conclusions about which one makes the most sense? Is, you might say, philosophical. It depends on how you think about these things. And this is very important because you're going to hear different points of view, because there are different points of view from people who are very knowledgeable and very reasonable. Knowledgeable and reasonable people can come to different conclusions. And that is what is happening here. So, on the following slides, I'm going to make the argument that the osculating Lilith is more reasonable. And again, keep in mind that there are many ways to conceptualize what these astronomical facts suggest to us. Everybody agrees about the facts, what they suggest to us, how we interpret it, how we think about it, and what might make sense to astrology. I'm going to go through all this so that you can understand how people are coming to different conclusions. And again, the osculating black moon Lilith is also called true black moon Lilith, and I will sometimes call it the osculating BML, and sometimes I'll call it the true BML. Just keep in mind it's the same thing, two different terms for the same thing. A lot of times I use true BML because it's shorter than osculating, which sounds kind of weird. But sometimes, we use the term osculating to be more precise. That's the more, you might say, precise technical term for it. So let's review how planetary positions are calculated. How do we know where the planets are? How do astronomers tell us? Let's go over this fundamental idea. There's something called the orbital elements. There are 6 of them, 6 orbital elements. Once you know these 6 orbital elements, you can calculate the position of the planets, but not super accurate. So there are 2 steps to calculating planetary positions. Step 1, you determine what the orbital elements are, the 6 orbital elements. How do you determine it? You look. You get your telescope out and you look and you watch the planet over time, and from those observations you can determine what these 6 osculating elements are. Once you have the 6 osculating elements, you can calculate the position of the planet. But that position is sometimes called the mean position or unperturbed position. It's the position of the planet if no other objects perturbed, you could say disturbed, this nice flow, this kind of beautiful, very predictable movement of a planet around the sun. But what happens is, as the planet is revolving, like the Earth revolving around the sun once a year, what happens is the Earth gets disturbed. And what's disturbing the Earth is when a planet comes near the Earth. So if Venus or Mars happens to move close to the Earth, the gravitational pull of Venus or Mars pulls on the Earth and changes the speed, could slow it down because it's close to it. So those are called the perturbations, mostly from the gravitational attraction of other objects, and there could be other reasons why this beautiful undisturbed motion changes. So 2 steps. 1, you get the unperturbed position from the 6 orbital elements, and then secondly, the perturbations are brought in to perfect the calculations. The 6 orbital elements are the semi-major axes. I describe this in more thoroughly in other videos on the astronomy of astrology, but just to review, the semi-major axis is a half of the distance of the orbit going the long way. The orbit is an ellipse, like an egg shape. You take the long path, like where the egg is longer, you take half of that. That's called the semi-major axis. Then there's the eccentricity, which is this ellipse. You can think of it as egg. Is it a skinny egg or almost a perfectly round egg? So an ellipse can be closer to being round or closer to being very, very long. And that's called the eccentricity. Literally how off center, how off from being a circle it is. Then there's the inclination, which is the tilt of the path of the planet compared to the path of the Earth around the sun. The path of the Earth around the sun is used as a frame of reference, like a standard. And then planets travel around the sun, but they're tilted to the path of the Earth. They're not exactly in the same plane, not in the same line, so they're tilted. And that's called the inclination. So here we see this yellow path of a planet. It could be any planet. It could be Earth, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, whatever. And it'll be tilted. Not usually tilted this much, but to illustrate the idea, they're showing a large tilt. And that tilt is called the inclination. And then there's the ascending node, or what we call in astrology the north node, the point where that orbit intersects, in other words, where it crosses the path that the Earth has around the sun. And then there's the aphelion, which is the direction of the orbit. Where is this orbit directed towards? And we use the point farthest away up here. That would be the aphelion. If you're talking about the moon, instead of aphelion, it's called apogee. So G means like Gaia, like Earth. A means away. So you have apogee, means the point where the moon is farthest away. And aphelion, for a planet going around the sun, helion refers to the sun, like Helios, the sun, away from the sun. Anyway, you've got an orbit, it's an ellipse. What direction is it facing? How skinny is it, or close to being round? How tilted is it? These various characteristics. From that, you can calculate the planetary positions. Now, here's where it gets interesting, and people start to have different points of view about this true black moon Lilith. Like, does it make any sense for astrology? And some people say, no, it makes no sense at all. And others say, yes, it does make sense. And it has to do with the perturbations. Is that, again, when a planet gets near, say it gets near the Earth, it'll speed or slow down the speed of the Earth. It disturbs the path of the Earth. Well, how do astronomers, how do they take the effect of a planet getting, say, near the Earth and slowing it down? The gravitational pull of another object disturbs this natural path. How is that calculated? What's very interesting, what the astronomers do is they adjust those 6 elements. So they say that the path of the planet is changing. They don't say, okay, this planet is coming near the Earth, let's just slow it down. Instead of going, 100,000 miles per hour, let's slow it down to, 90,000 miles per hour. Something like that would just slow down that direction. That, to me, might be a more intuitively obvious thing to do. It's like if something gets near it, it's pulling it and slowing it down. You could calculate how it's drawing it, but the astronomers don't do that. What they do, which is not, I don't think it's as intuitively obvious a thing to do, is they adjust the 6 orbital elements. And they do it through this called an iterative process, kind of like just gradually adjusting it until those orbital elements match the actual observation. So it kind of looks like they're fudging it, like they're just adjusting these orbital elements until it predicts where the planet is. And they have, it's not completely a guessing game. They have some, they call them heuristics, some way of estimating how a planet coming near will affect these orbital elements. So are you following all this? It might sound a little complicated. So let me review. It's actually pretty simple. Let me review. How do we know where the heck a planet is? How do we say, oh, Venus is at 9 Leo 43 right now? Well, how did somebody figure that out? Step one, they observed the 6 orbital elements. From that, you can calculate this unperturbed, it's kind of like a beautiful, we call it beautiful in science. It's just like smooth, easily predictable from these formulas that you just can calculate it. Where did those formulas come from? Who figured out those formulas? Johannes Kepler. Johannes Kepler figured it out in the early 1600s. 3 laws of planetary motion. And those are the laws that you just, like magic. You pop in this formula, bam, out comes the position of the planet. It's like pretty amazing. They can predict it, but it doesn't take account of the perturbations, which means, for example, another planet comes close to it, slows it down or speeds it up, pulls it farther away. Gonna pull it away from that nice motion. That's called the perturbation. How do astronomers include perturbations to get the calculation more accurately? They adjust the 6 orbital elements. Those adjusted 6 orbital elements are changing every day. So we say, oh, the eccentricity of this certain planet is so on, and the inclination is whatever, 5 degrees, 6 degrees. But actually it changes by tiny, tiny amounts every day. A very tiny amount. And it makes the planet going around the sun speed up, slow down, go farther away than it would otherwise, just like disturbs its orbit. So that's what happens. Now, here's the big philosophical question. And there's no simple answer to it. But people have come up with different answers. Here's the big question. You can see what you think. Are these oscillating elements, sounds impressive, right? You can impress your friends. Talk about oscillating elements. The oscillating elements, what are they? They are the 6 orbital elements. They're changing a little bit each day because of the perturbations. Are the oscillating elements in some sense real? Real in the sense that they're not just fudge factors. They're not just like some strange thing to make the planet orbits work, or are they real? Because if they're real in terms of, say, related to astrology, then that means that the true black moon Lilith is correct. Got it? So if the oscillating elements are, in a sense, real, by real we mean, you could think of it as, for us astrologers, that it's meaningful astrologically. If they're the foundation of something astrologically meaningful, then the true black moon Lilith is correct. And my argument, and a few other people, is that yeah, they're real. I mean, there's like lots of reasons to believe that they're very real, and that the true black moon Lilith is the correct Lilith. But other people say, how the heck can they be real? They're not like real. They're just like some weird fudged calculations. They're not based on anything, quote, real. And I'm going to go through the philosophical perspectives of how you could think that the oscillating elements are real, which is my philosophy, and how you could think that they're not real, which is the philosophy of other people. Other really smart, highly intuitive people. So people are just coming to different conclusions. Now, does any of this really matter? What's really going to matter is, does black moon Lilith work in the astrology charts? But the reason we want to know if they make sense is if something doesn't make sense, then you can waste a lot of time thinking about, exploring it. And also, there aren't a lot of people in astrology using rigorous ways of determining what works. You know, in the vibrational astrology, we do use a very strict evidence-based system, but in most other systems, people have not started doing that yet. From my point of view, hopefully they do, but they're not using the advanced modern research methods that are available to do it. So anyway, philosophically, when you think about what these orbital elements are, I think they're real, and a black moon Lilith is the thing that we should be looking at. And right now, Michelle Love, one of the vibrational astrology researchers, is conducting extensive research using modern research methods, which removes selection bias and so on. And her research is showing that the true black moon Lilith works. It works. It has a clear effect. Not surprising to us because it makes sense. And she will present her results at the 2024 Vibrational Astrology Conference in the first week of March in Gainesville, Florida. So, but for those people who are saying, well, how could Michelle's research be showing anything that true black moon Lilith works when true black moon Lilith makes no sense at all? And you will hear this if you explore some of the arguments about black moon Lilith, because some people say, well, that just shows that this research doesn't really work because there's no way it could work. Well, let's look at it. Why would true black moon Lilith possibly work or not work? What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here. I'm at about 22 minutes. I'm going to pick up with part 2, where I want to show you, or I will show you, a visualization of the oscillating elements to make it clearer. But this is a lot of new information for a lot of you, so let's stop here and then I'll show it to you. I also show it in the series of 3 videos on what black moon Lilith is, but I want to show it again. And now when we look at it, let's think about this thought. Is this oscillating orbit means the orbit of the planet changing because of the changing oscillating elements. Does it make any sense? Well, let's look at it. It will be much less abstract when we actually see what we're talking about. So the next video, I'm going to show it to you, and then we'll dive into the philosophy of it's like the nature of reality. Like what's the fundamental underlying things we're really talking about? And depending on how you think of that, the true black moon Lilith will either make sense or not make sense. Okay, I'll start the second video in the series showing you someone else, another video. I've got the link up here. We'll play it, and we'll see. This astronomer did a beautiful job of showing what an oscillating orbit is. And the question is that oscillating orbit in some sense real? Because if it is, then true black moon Lilith is real. Okay, I'll see you in the second video in the series. Thank you, my friends, for watching. God bless. Namaste.